Thank you so much for staying with Citizen Weekend. My name is Lillian Muli, and it's time for Women in Leadership. Muraya is an accomplished fashion designer who contributed a great deal in the evolution of the fashion industry in Kenya. She has a footprint in every major property hotspot in Nairobi and has numerous ongoing projects worth hundreds of millions of shillings. She's the brains behind Fourways Junction along Kiambu Road, Links Apartments on Gong Road, Roslyn Heights and Gardens in Gigiri, Spring Valley Business Park, Sukasa Apartments off Mombasa Road at Mlolongo, among many others. And she is our guest in studio this evening. That is Muraya, Property Group Director, Suraya Property Group. Thank you very much for joining us, Sue.
Thank you.
So your passion was initially in fashion design. Let's talk about the switch to real estate. How did this come about?
Actually, it wasn't, it kept on happening, because what used to happen is that my husband is an architect, and I used to go through the office and go through drawings and see what he's doing. And eventually when we had to do the bigger projects, because initially he was working as an architect, and then now we went into development, it was very easy for me to get into what he's actually doing. But it was a time when we decided now we have to do housing. And because we were working separately, I was doing my fashion and he was doing his architecture, we said, no, for this development, we're going to have to work together because this is a bigger vision.
So the transition for you, having, like I said, come from fashion to housing and design and brick and mortar, how easy was this for you, or difficult?
It's difficult. I can't say it's easy, but the difference is with the training of fashion is to start from nothing, from scratch, from a concept, and research on a theme, and then come up with the collection and then go into the final product. So I think the background of the design element is pretty much the same, but the switch is from the glamour of the catwalk into now the sites. That is a different environment, because this one you're working on a body and the other one we're working on a building. So it's pretty different, but the concept of design is very much the same.
So getting into an already saturated industry, or one that had the big players already in place, what did Suraya bring into the market that was initially not there?
Actually, the difference was when we started doing development, a lot of the developers were not doing pre-sales. So when we started doing the projects at initially with the first apartment blocks, everybody was buying what is completed, because that is what the mortgage companies would actually give you finance for. One of the things they would ask for is that project completed? Is that house finished? So you bring the documentation, and then we fund you, we assess you, and then we can sell you that. We can give you the mortgage for the house. So the difference was, when it came in, is the concept of pre-sales. When you sell it on paper and you look at it and you visualize it, you visualize the concept, the creating lifestyle, you pay a deposit and then start paying the tranches, or go for a mortgage approval even when it's still ongoing in terms of construction. So that was the biggest shift that we introduced in the country. And at the same time, the gated community. Because at that time, everybody would buy an apartment that's already completed somewhere. But in the gated community concept, that wasn't happening. So there's a lot that wasn't there, yet there was a need for it. Yes.
And before I get into my other question, people ask the question whether it is wiser to buy the building or the home upon completion, or off-plan, like you mentioned.
It depends. You can buy both, depending on whether you want to actually move in.
What is the better deal? What will I pay less for?
I believe the pre-sale is the best option, because with the pre-sale you get the appreciation, the capital gains in the project or in the house. Because at the beginning, the prices that we sell at are not the prices when it's all completed. Because when we're selling it on pre-sale, the valuers can only value to a certain extent what is on drawings, architectural wise. But when it's completed, there's more, they can value the actual house. So you can get that appreciation with time. And that is what most of it initially was a difficult sale, but eventually people now understand it's actually a good thing, because it's quite a good jump between the pre-sale and the final product.
And you talked about gated communities. Let's talk about some of the areas that Suraya has put up housing, such as former coffee plantations, Gashia, areas that were previously known as crime-ridden. The risk to actually put up these high-end homes in such areas that people were even skeptical of at the time to invest in.
Roslyn Heights is a very good example of where it is. It's actually next to Gashia. And when we started with partnering with the landowner, the one thing he said is that if what you're talking about is going to make sense, and you mean what you're saying, then I'll give you like the worst side, meaning the area that was literally next to Gashia. And we said fine, because what we're creating is a lifestyle. And once you create the lifestyle, even the people in Gashia are actually people. So you have a neighborhood, you have people who come and work for you, and it demystifies the whole issue of security. Yes. So it was quite, Foy is the same way. When we went there was nothing. Literally it was an old coffee plantation. But because it was a large project and the concept was actually a big project, it was the first actually in the country. Even that was a very difficult sell, even to get the approvals for it, to get such a concept. How would you be able to pull it out in terms of construction? So it's been one of those things that you visualize, you dream about, but when you're actually doing it, you have to believe in yourself and believe in the concept that you're putting together, because then that's where you're able to sell it to the next person. But today we look at it, and when I walk around and even nobody and see the children playing and nobody knows who you are, I feel this is something that we actually God gave us, but we actually were the people to put it together.
And people are wondering, where did you get the money, Sue? Buying all this land, setting up these beautiful homes, where did the money come from?
We didn't use money that we had. We used the concept of partnering with landowners. They have the land, we have the professional backing, we have in-house who do the architectural work, we'll do the selling, and then we do the pre-sales, and all that financing, whatever you pay, goes into the project, directly goes into the project. So there was no, initially even there was no money to actually even pay consultants. It was, we were like 5 in the office, 5, the messenger, the driver, myself, 1 draftsman, and Pete, who's the architect. So it's not that we started with money, we started with a vision and a concept. And the money that is put in, and I always say, when you pay your deposit, that money is put into the houses, into construction. So we are the ones who take our profit after everything else is completed. So it's not at the beginning, it's at the end. So the concept of how much you need to start the project is more the professionalism, the concept that has more powerful and stronger than actually having the cash in hand.
Right, and a lot of people in this country believe that owning a home is a pipe dream. The mortgage rates are crazy. So does Suraya offer a financing model for people who want to own a home but don't necessarily have the money or can't even qualify for that mortgage, because you need to be able to qualify for that mortgage even before you start talking about it or thinking about owning that home?
Okay, 2 things. There are a lot of people who can qualify but do not go for the mortgages. Either they feel they're fearful, they don't even try. Even if you can be qualified for half, you can wait and put a deposit, and by the time the house is completed, go back and they'll value the house, because they'll charge the house towards your mortgage. So that's one of the other things that people don't do. Yes, they were high. Currently, because of the interest rates coming down, they've actually come down. So it's actually a very positive thing that has happened. But we don't have a specific package apart from the one we launched currently with the card fund for the civil servants together with the government of Ministry of Housing. That is specifically for the public servants, and we have scheme through the card fund for about 8%, but specifically for the civil service. Yes, so that's the only one we're actually working on. We don't have another one that we have in-house, but it's something we're working on. We're working on it because it's been coming up over and over. And at the same time, the people who come and they want to save with us, can I pay a certain amount of money, and then after I pay the deposit or save with you, you can convert that into a deposit. So that's something we're looking at, where we can pick that deposit and convert it into your savings and convert it into a deposit, and eventually we can qualify you in-house. So it was to be for a start to the end.
Right. And what about skeptics who believe in building their own homes? What would you say to them? Or the land craze in this country, where people sort of buy property and sit and wait and weigh whether the rates will go up, or whether eventually they will be able to afford to start construction. What would you say to such skeptics who believe that this is the better option?
I say both are good. If that's where your heart is. For us, we're developers, and we would like to sell as many houses. We cannot even meet the demand. Currently, the demand in the country is about 200,000 houses per year. We're hardly doing 50,000. So there's that person who feels they can build. If they can afford, they can go ahead and do it. The only thing I'd advise them to do is that when you're doing it, you'd rather go to one of the financial institutions and take a facility to build. Because if you try and build slowly, which is fine, eventually you don't have the know-how yourself to actually do that or supervise.
Right.
So you're better off getting a financial institution which has a whole package of these consultants who can manage that process for you. Because at the end of the day, what you don't want to do is lose money or be upset when the process is happening, because you're busy in your office.
Right.
Because when you're here, you can't be at the site, yet the house is yours, and you have to make sure that it works out properly.
You don't want to find a misplaced sink somewhere.
No, they are professionals who can do that.
Okay, so like I said earlier, Suraya has packaged various models that allow everyone to own a piece of real estate. And Suraya, so you develop homes as low as 900,000 shillings, consisting of bed-sitters, 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. But there have been critics who feel that some of these spaces are very small for the lower cost houses, that they have spaces that are barely habitable. What's your response to that?
I kind of disagree with that, because one of the reasons in the concept, initially what they had actually put together as the habitable, gazetted unit was like 18 square meters for the house. We have even a smaller one. But what we've been doing is telling them, okay, fine. When you live in the 7th quarter, what is that size? Yet you're on somebody else's house, and yet you're not going to own this house.
Right.
But when you go to this house, it is slightly bigger and has your toilet inside. It has your kitchen inside, not outside. You have your cupboard inside. You can put your bed inside that bed sitter. Then everything changes, and it's yours. And then I will always tell clients, we're not saying that is where you're going to live permanently. We call it a starter home. So if you start there, you can move to a studio, you can move to a 1-bedroom, or you can move to a 3-bedroom. Recently, what we are doing is actually getting people to come into our project Nkasa on Mulolongo and telling them, I'm going to give you time to stay in. If it's a month, come and stay inside. See how you feel it. Because that misconception, it's too small. You can only feel it. We test drive cars. We try shoes. We try clothes. This is a new concept we want to do. We want to get people to come in, and we tell them, we want you to test this house. Come in for a month and feel it. After a month, do you feel you can actually live in this house, or can you live in a studio? Then people will start talking and say, yes, it is habitable.
Right. Have you ever been able to track people that actually, as the company has been growing, have you had people who initially started very small and are now perhaps living in the higher end areas still with Suraya?
Yes. Actually, we've tracked from the first project, one of our clients at Roslyn, and the ones who bought are not the ones who are not willing to buy. I had to literally convince them that if you have the money, don't look at cachet, don't call it a cardboard house, because this house was selling for 13 million at the time. 13 million on half acre. And I was telling him, don't say that time in Runda they were going for 30 million. So they're like, how are you doing this? So we said, because we're not buying the land, so there's no land cost. The consultants are in-house. So all these costs that have been absorbed, I'm able to give you that house at that price. Because if I have to buy land, I have to pay the interest, I have to pay the cost. If I have to pay the consultants, I have to outsource selling, then all those costs would be higher. So that's why I'm managing to sell this house. Now the house is worth 3 times, 4 times the amount in the same house in Gashi. Now that client has moved. One of the clients has moved with me to Fourways, has moved with me to the Links project, even to the point of buying Nkasa for the children. And saying, I'm even going to buy for my grandchildren. The reason is they're saying, this is me living here. I can invest and actually, I've seen the appreciation, first of all, so I know it's going to appreciate. And at the same time, now I can pay rent. Then this other one, I want my children also to learn how to live in the Links project, which is also a starter home.
And as we close, milestone Suraya has attained so far?
Having a portfolio of close to about 5,000 houses, 3,500 completed houses, having one of the largest gated community in Kenya, having to start a Links concept and an Nkasa starter home, and currently doing 20,000 houses for the public servants and the civil service, together with a partnership with the Chinese government and the National House and the Ministry of Housing, is to me is a big achievement, because we're not only housing the private sector, we are also housing the civil servants, which to us is very important.
Right, and of course, most importantly, key things one should consider before buying their first home.
First, the most important thing that they need to look at is how much can you afford. Let's start there. The other thing you must look at, do not buy where you think you're going to live, because most of the time where you desire to live sometimes is not where you can afford. So you don't confuse the two, where I eventually want to live and actually owning a home. Affordability is important, because if I can afford to buy an Nkasa and I live in Westlands, it's okay. Those are very important key elements. Then go and get yourself assessed in a financial institution. How much can you afford to be given it for mortgage? But the other thing I learned the other day, very few people have even accounts. They don't even open accounts. If they do business, they don't even have audited accounts for that. So when you go to the financial institution for a mortgage, they ask you for 3 years audited accounts. You've been working for 10 years, making a lot of money, but you don't have the documentation. So open that account. Get your money to, even if you're in business, put your money in that account. So there are things that people need to learn that eventually will help them, as opposed to putting the money together and using it to, I mean, it's okay what you do, but that process will help you. Yeah.
Right, and as we close, you've done 10 years. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for joining us on
Thank
Women
you
in
for
Leadership.
having me.
It's been amazing. Are you wearing one of your designs?
Yes, I am.
Wow.
This was actually for my 50th celebration.
Great.
So I said, I couldn't wear another designer.
Wow, absolutely amazing.
And for 10 years.
Muraya, Director Suraya Properties, talking investment, talking home ownership to us here on Women in Leadership. We're crossing over to Joy and Willis Raburu on 10 over 10. It's a show you don't want to miss. Use the hashtag 10 over 10, and of course continue tweeting. Hashtag is Women in Leadership. Hashtag is one-on-one. Thanks.